Okay, so who are we? We are health professionals with deep love to soil, farming, and ecosystem health, and deep craving and curiosity to learn about health beyond what we're taught on our university degrees. So I think we're very concerned of how much talk there is about calorie count and about, this diet against that diet, and how much the agribusiness and the industry of dieting and industry of supplements is trying to put us against each other, where we are not really addressing the key element of how is our food produced and what are the consequences of the food production and what are the challenges in next upcoming 30 years that we have to address. So in our food and health team, we have three amazing ladies. Reza, or Heiza, if you're from Portugal. She's a naturopathic nutrition student. She has a 6 years background in working with agroforestry. Right now, she works on a farm as well, and she's behind Regenerative Agroforestry podcast. Then Christina, she's behind all of the technical elements today. She studied bachelor in dietetics and agroecology, and she's heavily involved with agroecology Europe movement, and she also works on the farm. And then I have studied global nutrition and health, and I'm working right now on scaling regenerative agriculture in Europe. And then we have our farm team, Dimitri, that is with us today as well, and he will present parts of regenerative agriculture. He studied natural resources management and agroforestry. He works with multiple farmers. He is behind one of the most famous regenerative farm in Greece. He also organizes the agroforestry podcast. And then we have Marco, who studied agronomy. He works with regenerative agriculture. He works all the way from small-scale farmers to 2,000 hectares, specialized in Kirai design. So now, before I go to my slides, and I will talk about our biggest passion, which is soil, I'll give the voice to Mary so she can present the movement that she's behind.
Thank you so much. Let me share my screen here. Can you all see okay? Yes, yeah. Great. I see some nods. First of all, I feel like I am in amazing company. I am truly honored to be speaking with you all today. I am so excited about the fact that this movement is growing and burgeoning into an incredible revolution. So just know that I'm so humbled and honored to be here. So thank you so much for having me. So I term myself an eco-dietitian, and you might be going, what the heck is that? There is no real definition of an eco-dietitian. I just took the word dietitian and I put an eco in front of it because, dietitians are normally thought of as people who are trying to help people to make decisions around their food choices that support human health, or increase access to food choices that increase and improve human health. And for me, it became much more than that. I mean, I worked in the clinical realm for 14 or so years. I got a little toe in that area as well. But I remember waking up one day in August of 2018, and I live in Seattle, Washington, in the United States, in the Pacific Northwest, and we have had a lot of wildfires, which I know you have had as well in various different parts of the world, wherever you may be from. And I couldn't breathe the air outside, and I couldn't actually go into work because I couldn't breathe. And I called in work to say, I can't come in today, I'm going to work from home. And I had the privilege of being able to do that. And I know there are many who cannot do that. And that summer, that 2018, for me was the pivot point, was the turning point where I said, I can no longer not do something about the connection between our environment, the food system, and human health and climate change. So I vowed that summer to make a big difference. So when I think, for me, about diet and nutrition and food and health as an eco-dietitian, I am always considering the environment. And we are intricately connected to the environment. I mean, I'm from New York City. I grew up in pavements, but I think as I moved to the Pacific Northwest, I started realizing, oh my God, I feel better when I'm around trees, when I'm around water. I just ultimately felt a human health connection. So we know that when the health of the environment is compromised, this affects human health. And this is on a very basic level. If there's polluted air, if there's wildfire particulate matter in the air, we can't breathe as well. If the climate is changing, we can't survive as well. If we are contaminated water, we're having a direct impact. Additionally, when the environment is compromised, that affects the quality of food. It affects food security, whether that's about yield or climate change issues. And when the environment is compromised, this may actually increase the nutrient needs of the human beings who live in that environment. And we all know, because we work in the realm of food justice, that these issues that we see are often very far worse in the marginalized communities and for marginalized individuals. Specifically as it relates to our food system, we know that our industrial model has a terrible impact on the environment. And this is not just about climate change. The food system is responsible for about 1/3 of global greenhouse gases, but it also is compromising our operating systems, our air, our water, our ocean, our soil, which I know you'll be talking about, deforestation, the loss of so much biodiversity, which has an impact on human health as well. When we see a decreased variety of food, when we see decreased nutrient density of food related to how we grow our food currently, that affects the nutritional status of humans and of animals too. When animals are consuming different kinds of foods, that affects the quality of their meat. And then there's just the exposure of humans to agrochemicals and other environmental toxicants that affect metabolic function and might increase the nutrient needs of individuals. I've had patients who have lived in environments where they don't have access to healthy foods. They are living in places where the soil is poor quality or the air is poor quality. When people have asthma, their nutrient needs are higher. And if we aren't providing food where those nutrient needs are being met, that can have implications. And ultimately, the very food that we are creating that is having such a detrimental effect on the environment is the food that we are trying to get people to eat less of, or to companies to produce less of. These are these poor quality, ultra processed foods that we know are contributing to chronic disease. Now, on a positive note, because who wants to be negative all day? When the environment is supported, when it is healthy, when it is thriving, that supports human health. We are inextricably connected to nature. Sustainable food systems, regenerative food systems, resilient, just food systems that focus on agroecological principles create healthier food and healthier people. They are more apt to produce food sustainably, which does so many things: mitigates the climate crisis, protects the environment and our operating systems, increases nutrient density of food. So we're seeing so much research out there, I'm sure that you are seeing this as well, that when foods are grown without the use of chemicals, or when they are grown in a way that supports organic principles, phytochemicals, those plant compounds that are protective to human health, are higher. Omega-3 fatty acids are higher in animals that are grass-fed as opposed to grain-fed. This has an impact on our microbiome, on our immune function. I cannot consider that. And ultimately, these kinds of food systems safeguard our food security. So we as healthcare practitioners, and as a dietitian, when I think about recommending foods, recommending dietary patterns, I might make those recommendations after being informed by how that food was produced. I'm always considering access, always considering culture. That's a key part of this. But my focus can be, as a dietitian, when possible, local, seasonal, more plant forward, better meat, sustainable seafood, foods that have a lower carbon footprint or food print. And I also take into account the exposures that an individual might have had to environmental toxicants. That makes a difference in their health status. And also working to promote or recommend foods that are grown without chemicals when that is possible. As an eco-dietitian, I see just incredible potential for people who are in the health field. We can guide individuals, communities, systems, policies to purchase food, to produce food in a way that supports both human health and planetary health. Ultimately, what harms the environment harms human health almost always, and what supports the environment almost always supports human health. So I really cannot imagine being anything else but an eco dietitian. This is a picture of me at a farmer's market here in the Seattle, Washington area. This was during COVID when the city tried to cut down or shut down rather all of the farmers markets out of concern for people's safety. And I was one of the people who was showing up every week and these farmers were selling illegally. But I thought, if we can't support our farmers, if we can't get local food, if we can't feel safe with the food that is being grown in this way, I have to make a difference here. So I continued to shop at the farmers markets, even though it was kind of illegal. So what do I do as a dietitian who is an eco-minded, eco-conscious person? I certainly don't pretend to have all the answers or to be doing everything that somebody could be doing. I'm limited in my scope, but I'll tell you a little bit about what I do, and hopefully it will be helpful for you. Number one, educate. I make that connection between sustainable food systems and human health to the public, to other dietitians, healthcare providers, and students who will soon be healthcare providers. And dietitians aren't just working in the clinical realm. Many of us are working in food service. We have an opportunity to influence the foods that will be procured, the stuff that's on the menu, where we get that food from. That can make a big difference if we are influential in that way. And my goal is to not tell people what to do, because we know that never works. No one likes to be told what to do. But my goal is to spark curiosity, to increase someone's ability to think critically about our food system, and to empower them to become agents of change in reimagining the food system, transforming the food system. And this is also about policy, not just always about individual choices. We have a policy right now, or an act that's in our Congress, that's called the Healthy Future Students and Earth Act, that is about transforming the school lunch program to be more plant-based, to offer more options to people for whom plant-based might be part of their culture. This is to help with climate change mitigation and to provide healthier choices. So it really hits the nail on the head in 3 different ways. Number 2 is I act often as a nutrition and sustainability advisor for organizations and brands. When there's a conversation about sustainable food systems, I bring in the nutrition and human health piece. When there's a conversation about human health and nutrition, I bring in the sustainability piece. So I come at it from all these angles. And I'm evaluating promotional materials. I'm creating promotional materials that make that connection between sustainability and health. And lastly, I'm a community builder. I'm a networker, doing exactly what we're doing today, connecting individuals with other individuals who care about climate, who care about regenerative agriculture and health, and organizations to organizations. And I have to put a plug in for LinkedIn, because that is how this organization found me and I found them. And I love the fact that these connections can be made online from thousands of miles apart. Ultimately, I write, I speak, I teach, I podcast, I lecture, I build curriculum, and I keep learning. I practice humility because I know I do not have all the answers, especially as a white privileged person living in the Pacific Northwest. Real quick, I'll go through the Planetary Health Collective, and then I will pause for any questions. But this is an organization that I am on the steering committee for, and I'm the director of education. We are a movement to mitigate climate change by leveraging the skill sets of nutrition professionals and food professionals. And we have so much to offer as those who are working with behavior change models, making food, creating food, talking about food. We educate, we create platforms for people to learn about the climate crisis as it relates to food system. We incubate, we create a community, we welcome all people from all different backgrounds at all stages of their career, and we help to activate them, to provide opportunities to engage in changing the system on a policy level, on a personal level, on an individual level, on a community level, at their work, at their jobs. Any opportunity we have to give them advice, guidance, or to learn from them, we take that opportunity. We have panels where we have all kinds of wonderful speakers from different backgrounds, and we get to hear about what they are doing in their professional lives related to climate change mitigation and protection of the environment. And this is just a little bit about our Instagram account, where we are always trying to make sure that people feel armed with tools, whether it's about reading, whether it's about a blog post. We have monthly panels that feature healthcare professionals, nutrition professionals, food professionals talking about what they do. We've got a summer series called Cook for the Climate, where we feature an ingredient and a chef and cook a meal with our community. We provide resources, and we need a little humor in our lives. So we provide a little bit of humor here and there, because this is a serious crisis we're in. And if we can't enter into these conversations with a little bit of a smile, we might be in trouble. So ultimately, here is a little bit about the organizations that I'm involved with. I'm happy to take a question or two. I want to be mindful of the time and respectful of all the other folks who are going to be speaking today. And I'm looking forward to hearing the conversation as well. So thank you so much for having me. I'm just thrilled to be part of this movement. Thank you.
Wow, Mary, this is basically, I just wish we could like take you into Europe so you can do all of the work with us. Because I really
Okay.
see like so much happening in US, and especially with regenerative culture as well, but just with Planetary Health Collective, and I really see lack of this kind of movements in Europe, and I think we have so much to learn from you. And I will be a privilege, most likely, to probably talk with Mary after this show as well, or after this webinar. So if anybody else have a question, please, this is the time for you to ask it up. You can either write it out and I can ask for you, or you can just unmute and ask it. Okay, Dimitri, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Haiza. Mary, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. I just want to ask how the movement, the Planetary Health Collective, started in the first place. Like, how did it come up together?
It was started by a woman named Ayten Salahi. She is also a dietitian, and she came up with the idea. I am not even sure where it popped into her head, but I think she was starting to realize the significant impact that the food system is having on the climate and on the environment, and felt that it was an important space for people who were working in the food industry as nutrition professionals, as dietitians, as healthcare practitioners, that there was a space for them to have a voice and to learn about how they could participate and be agents of change. So I think it just came from that. And I found her, I was thinking the same things all the way across the states. She was here, I was here, and then we had another friend in the middle, and the three of us came together and became the steering committee, and the rest is history.
Thanks.
And I also, because I join your Facebook group, and I can see people being really active, also not like passively consuming the social media, but also like sharing things with each other and encouraging each other, as you said, like as they equip each other with the tools. So what is really interesting for me, because that's one of also the objective for our coalition, is to like work internationally in Europe, but then also allow to people to find each other so they can like influence the local policy makers or the local communities. Can you explain a bit like this dynamic, how it is that US is so huge and you have this very like multi-state organization, yet if people still manage to do something in their local environments?
I'm not sure what the alchemy is behind that. I think we have been around now for 3 years, and it's taken time to build this, but we keep on putting out information into social, oops, pardon me, that's me having a real life, I apologize, my phone's ringing. We put things out into social media. We are constantly reaching out to other organizations, and we have kept up on it. And I think it just takes time to build that. And the fact is that the United States might be huge, but I think there is a small subset of the population that is starting to be interested in this topic, and it's growing. But I think those people are actively out there going, where are my people? Where are my people? And I think we keep on finding each other as you research yourself, as you're online or as you're talking to people. The conversations happen, and then this person talks to this person, and you realize you know this person, you see this person on LinkedIn, And I think it's just been a process, but it has really been an amazing orchestration that's happened naturally.
And did you ever organize like a meetup of the people to also be able to see each other face to face, or besides, of course, the main founders of the Planetary Health Collective?
I believe we tried, but then the delightful COVID came along, and that pretty much put that on hold for the last couple of years. But we do have goals. In fact, the 3 steering committee members, we have never met in person. So yeah, I feel like we have, because we've had so many meetings online, but we've never met in person. I have met a couple of other people in person who live in the area where I live, but that is one of our goals, because I think we're all longing for that in-person participation and collaboration. It feels so meaningful. So I think that's definitely one of our goals.
You have no idea how relatable it is, because like Reza and Christina, we only work like together 2 or 3 months now, but we also never saw each other yet. We are going to see each other at the beginning of September or in Amsterdam. So I think it will be just like explosion of love and hugs, and
Yes.
like, let's do this kind of energy.
I'm jealous in a loving and supportive way, but I am jealous of that. That's great.
I totally understand. Well, thank you so much. And I hope that everybody took screenshots so that you can connect with Mary and follow her everywhere, because she's super kind. And I just reached out to her, and she was like, "Yeah, of course I can do this." And she didn't question it once. So I'm sure if you have anything that you think that might be relevant between you and Mary, I'm sure that she'll be super kind and she'll answer just like she did with me. So thank you for this.
Thank you. It really is my goal to save the world one plate at a time, one conversation at a time. So I thank you for the opportunity. Thanks so much.
And then I know that you have to drop off at some point. You still stay with us, maybe 20 more minutes. Perfect. Okay, so let's go back to our agenda. And now we will quickly talk about soil, which Mary already summarized, I think, on a very amazing level. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have a very deep knowledge about soil. However, I still think no matter how much we know, the more we can talk about it and the more we can share, the more it can become like vivid in our lives. So let's just get to it. So soil is the basis of all of our life. Soil is where our food, our life, and our existence begins. 95% of all of our foods, and some of the research shows that it's even up to 99%, comes from what's happening below our ground. And a healthy soil should be an ecosystem booming with life. In one spoon of healthy soil, there should be more organisms than there is people on the whole planet, which is insane. So healthy microbiome consisting of bacteria, fungi, protozoas, nematodes has a crucial role for maintaining the health of the ecosystem all the way ground down, all the way to us. And it's fascinating because the microbiome of our soil resembles so closely the microbiome that we carry within us. And I think for way too often we forget that there is really no separation between what's happening internally in us and what's happening outside of us. So the plants need 18 essential minerals, and 15 of those minerals are supplied with the soil. So besides carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, which the plants can synthesize from the atmosphere, all of the rest of the minerals comes from the soil. However, in order for the plants to be able to access those essential nutrients, soil microbiome has to do its job. And its job is for the soil bacteria and fungi to produce enzyme and organic acids to be able to first release the nutrients from the rocks and then transmit them to the plant. So, I mean, all of the nutrients that we have start with the nutrients not only being present in the soil, but also microbiome being able to do its job, which is delivering those micronutrients to the plant. So I know this graph is super intense. So I didn't put this for you to like study it necessarily, just for you to have it, because we will also send this presentation later on in the email for you. But this graph beautifully summarizes all of the essential minerals in the human body and in the plant, and how all of them starts by being present in our soils. So we were super lucky with the timing of this webinar, because just 2 days ago, there is a new study coming on soil microbiome and One Health. On this graph, you can see the direct link between soil, plant, animal, and human microbiomes. And from this direct connection between soil and human microbiome, there's this concept of One Health emerging, concept that highlights the human health dependencies on the ecosystem components and soil, plants, and animals. And this particular concept especially focuses on the microbial communities and the red thread of the health that starts all the way in the soils and go for all of the members of our ecosystem. But of course, soil provides so much more for us than just food and access to nutrients. Soils also purify our waters, recycle the nutrients, contributes to carbon sequestration, and it simply is the place that holds all of our cultural heritage. From all of those elements that the soil directly contributes to human health, there's another concept emerging called soil security, which directly derive on the popularity among especially legislators of food security or water security. And soil security focus on not only the very tangible ecosystem services for human, but also incorporated the social elements that the soil plays in our life. But just you can imagine, it's never like, yes, it's beautiful, but there's always has to be, I mean, we are talking about the climate crisis, so there has to be the dark side of the story. We are hugely mistreating and mismanaging this beautiful resource. And every year we are losing size of a Costa Rica of healthy soils. And you might heard about this, that we only have 60 harvests left of the topsoil where all of our food begins. And this numbers come from a few years ago. So now we have only around 55 years. And bringing soil back to life is a very long-term process. And it can take around 1,000 years to get just 2 to 3 centimeters of soil back. And of course, it's a very long process, as our planet didn't come up with the beauty of ecosystem and soil just like this. We, through the physical, chemical, and biological weathering of the primary minerals from the rocks to the soil, it took thousands and thousands of years. So soil is one of the not really renewable asset that we have on our planet. And there's various reasons behind the terrible loss of the soil on this planet, from deforestation to overuse of chemicals to farming practices as plowing, which are continuously killing the microbial life, hence reducing the ability of the mineral content to be taken up by the plants. And that has a very tangible effect. We are looking at water scarcity, we are looking at food scarcity, we are looking at climate refugees, which is already happening very actively. So Europe, it's not in any better situation, as our soil are also hugely depleted. Around 50% of the mineral soils in Europe have only around 0 to 2% of organic carbon content. And worldwide, I know that in the audience, we have many nutritionists and dietitians. This is directly linked to malnutrition. We have people, up to 2 billion people suffering from iron deficiency, 740 million suffering from iodine, up to 1 million people suffering from selenium, and 17% suffering from the zinc deficiencies. So this is a last slide that I know that is there's lots happening, but as also Mary very well summarized, the problem is not only what's happening with our soils, but also how are we using our agricultural land. So on the left, you can see different food groups. And in the first category, you can see how much land is dedicated for each of those food groups. So obviously, as we all know, meat takes huge chunk of the arable land. And then when you look at the production, the food hugely decreases. And here, the vegetables really take off. But I think what's, for me at least, the most interesting is the final column, which shows the total calorie in production. And here at the very top in white, you can see sugar. So despite sugar like taking relatively little place, it contributes to huge amount of our calories intake. And I think this graph really well presents the modern diet, which is sugar, vegetable oils, and wheat products and other staple products. So this is what if we go to supermarket, majority of the products that are there consist of those three food groups. So now I would like to, because we have spoke a lot and it's about also hearing each other's opinions, I would love to send us to the breakout room discussions. And I would like to ask you the question of what is the role, or what kind of role does soil play in your life, community, and work? And what can you do using your knowledge, your unique expertises and networks to spread the insight about the importance of soil in our lives? So I will stop sharing and I will ask my colleague Christina to send us to different. Yes, Brian, I have the citation. I will love to share it with you.
Susanna, you are mute.
Yeah, now I give the voice to you, huh?
I am, so it says, okay.
I'll share the screen. This works. We shouldn't be
Present.
here. Yeah, but we're a bit.
Present first. So is it working? Can everybody see it? So I'm Haiza. I'm going to talk a bit about regenerative agriculture as a tool for all of these problems that Susanna was talking about. So what is actually wrong with our current agricultural system, right? Soil degradation is one of the big aspects. Agriculture is damaging our soils by over-tilling, overuse of chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. Agriculture as an industry, it's one of the biggest greenhouse gas emitters through deforestation or through the manufacturing or uses of fertilizers. Agriculture is one of the major contributors to biodiversity loss through direct destruction of wild habitats. And finally, it's also polluting our waterways, our rivers, our aquifers, our oceans, and therefore affecting one of the key life aspects, which is water for us. So when we look at these four main elements here, there are many more problems that we could talk about, but we realize this is really serious. The gravity of these problems are directly impacting climate change and our existence here on the planet. And how can we tackle this? How can we act quick in a way that we can still make an impact, positive impact? And regenerative agriculture is the answer. So what is regenerative agriculture? When we look at the semantics, to regenerate is when we bring a system that is not functioning well, that it's in a bad state, and we improve it. We bring life back. We are able to regenerate it and make it active and successful. So regenerative agriculture is a combination of ancient techniques with modern technology that will regenerate land and bring life back to agriculture. Just quickly going through the differences between conventional, organic, and regenerative. There is two key points to be mentioned here. First of all, is that organic, it's not regenerative. I mean, it can be regenerative, but it's really not necessarily the case. When we look at organic production nowadays, industrial organic production, we still see a very reductionist mindset. We still see huge monocultures being planted, tilling. We just changed to organic inputs, but we're still using a lot of inputs. And then the second key point here is that conventional can be regenerative, which is a bit counterintuitive, but we have huge knowledge being held by farmers that are doing conventional agriculture. And we need to tap on this knowledge. We need to listen to these farmers and work with these farmers. We shouldn't go against conventional farmers. We should work with them and have a transition towards regenerative. So how does regenerative agriculture manifest? We as a coalition, we have written a regenerative agriculture manifesto, which is just basic principles or guidelines to help us to understand how regenerative agriculture can manifest. So Dimitri is gonna talk about it a little bit.
All right, this is my little technical interlude. And I hope that by explaining the next, or the principles that we've laid out and of course inspired ourselves by the work of many others, we can get a bit of an idea of what what regenerative agriculture looks like in practice. That's kind of my objective right now. For some people, this may be repetitive. For others, it may be new information. So the first one is to improve soil health. Of course, as we've seen in the other two presentations, soil is so foundational to the health of our planet. Plants grow on soil, healthy plants grow on healthy soil, and we need healthy plants to have healthy ecosystems, not just healthy bodies and health for ourselves. And so how do we do that? We have different techniques. We use cover crops, for example, which are plants that are planted just for the sake of the health of the soil. We don't disturb the soil. We don't till it too often. We till minimally, or we don't till at all. We also make sure that the living roots, the roots are always left inside the soil, so they structure the soil. And we try to diversify, use many different types of plants, diverse cover crops. We diversify our crop rotations, and we integrate trees, for example, with agroforestry systems to do that. The second principle is to reduce dependence on external inputs. We know that external inputs create pollution through, for example, nutrient leaching, etc., as Heise was saying. And so if we reduce the amount of external inputs we use, we're going to reduce the risk that these inputs leach out into the ecosystem, or for example, kill insecticides, killing bees and damaging the beneficial insects that we have. And so how do we do that? It may be a bit repetitive from the last one, but again, we plant cover crops, we increase soil organic matter, we activate soil microbiology, which is then capable, as Susanna was saying, to generate its own fertility. Of course, this is a process, but this is how we achieve this objective. Number 3 is to sequester carbon. We know that one of a huge sink, a huge opportunity for us to store carbon back in the planet is through soils and through forests. And so we have a huge opportunity, if we are to take climate change seriously, to start putting soil back and start putting carbon back into our soils. And this has also the secondary effect of increasing the fertility of the soil. So it's a win-win situation. And we do that, again, by taking good care of our soils, by using cover crops, getting lots of biomass into the soil, and by planting and diversifying with agroforestry, for example, where in this case, the carbon is stored inside the trees themselves, and it can represent a significant quantity of carbon. Number 4 is to enhance watershed health. And this is vital, as we know. How do we achieve that? If we have a soil that's rich in carbon, it can absorb the excess nutrients. Microbiology can break down pollutants and chemicals. It's absolutely fascinating. We can then also integrate riparian buffers, which are basically trees planted along streams that can absorb the excess nutrients that have managed to get away from the field before they enter the river, and they can absorb up to 80–90% of those excess nutrients that are extremely damaging in our waterways. Number 5 is to increase biodiversity. This we achieve by diversifying our plants. So by diversifying our plants, we diversify the fauna that we see around them, also integrating trees, again, and taking good care of our soil. If we have healthy soil, this is the structure in which we have that hosts healthy insect population, microbiological population, and this is kind of the trophic level on which everything else bases itself and life structures itself. So healthy soil is the basis of a healthy ecosystem. And again, what we're hearing the same things here: healthy soil, diversification. These are the key concepts that we can take out of this. Finally, productivity and profitability. This is really important to take into account because we do have a population to feed, and we also do have rural livelihoods to maintain. We cannot be spreading any technique that will not be respecting farmers as businessmen and businesswomen. It's very important for their livelihoods to be able to make an income. It's already not very hard, not very easy for farmers. So this is something that's really important. And we do see feedback and studies actually, and especially farmer experiences that have shown that with regenerative agriculture, they've managed to reduce input costs by so as much as 40–50%. Some farmers have completely reduced their inputs, which is phenomenal. The impact on the economics at the end are just really big. And so there we go. I think this is the end of this little parenthesis on the techniques, and yeah, hope you enjoy.
Okay, so touching upon nutrient density, which is for me the most exciting part. For those of you who haven't heard of this term before, nutrient density is what we can measure of minerals, vitamins, polyphenols, antioxidants that are present in our crops, whether that's animal or plant crops. And why is that important, especially if we're here talking with health professionals and people that work in the healthcare system or want to have an impact on the healthcare system. Susanna has mentioned all of these deficiencies, and we are, as a society, in a disease state. But we, as health professionals, can enhance the health of our patients, of our community, by growing food that is more nutrient dense. We could say in the past that if you eat a portion of spinach, that you would get that amount of iron, and we know that this is not true. We know that different crops grow in different ways with different agricultural practices, have different nutrient profiles. We know that the type of practices that the farmer uses will directly affect the nutrient density of the plants. So better than that, we know now, we have new studies by David Montgomery and Biclet that show that not just that, but regenerative practices actually enhance the nutrient density. We know that, we have empirical data around that. And we also have the amazing, super interesting work of the Bionutrient Food Association, which I highly recommend everybody to check it out. They have been working on this for almost a decade now, and they have been collecting data from different crops and different farms, and they have reached the conclusion that blueberry grown with regenerative practices have higher antioxidants, higher polyphenols, higher mineral contents. So we really need to push that as a demand, as consumers, as a population. And how can we do that? So the bionutrient meter, if you have never seen this, it's the tool created by the BFA, which is just a little tool that we can have in our pockets, and we take to the supermarket and we test on site what is the mineral content of this tomato, of these fruits. And we as consumers, we buy the most nutritious fruits that we want. So therefore, we demand farmers to produce more nutritious foods. We create the shift that we want in agriculture, and we ask for regenerative agriculture practices to manifest as well. We understand, in the end, to wrap this up, that human health, optimal human health, is completely interconnected with ecosystem health. From nutrient-dense plants to producing medicine, to helping and enhancing our immune system, agriculture is the foundation of human health, and we know that by now. And for us here at the Coalition, our main goal is to have a big impact in our healthcare systems. And how can we do that? The World Health Organization has acknowledged that over 65% of our diseases are caused by lifestyle choices. And what are these determinants of health? Economic stability, education, social and community context, health and healthcare, and neighborhood and built environments. And all of these aspects, they're all related directly or indirectly with soil. But for us here, for everybody that is in this room today, how can we have an impact on our health and healthcare systems? How can we contact universities, medical schools, foundations, associations, clinics, or any other private health sector, public health sector? How can we get in contact? How can we spread this education, this knowledge, and actually impact our healthcare system? So this is where we're co-creating here, and this is where we want to go as well from the beginning of this coalition and this first webinar, is how can we move together to spread this education? So now we're going to go to our second discussion. We're going to answer two questions. First, How much do you know about the farming practices of foods that you consume? 2, in your opinion, how can we bring regenerative agriculture knowledge and education to health professionals? Okay, so Christina, I'll let you move us to the rooms.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. I learned a lot from you guys. It was wonderful. I hope we'll stay in touch for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you.
I forgot to actually ask you if you would like to also share something. So maybe now also let's take 2 or 3 minutes if anybody would like to share what they discussed in the breakout room discussion.
Well, this is Beth. Thank you for everybody for being here and doing this. And I will say the breakout rooms are always so much fun, and we got hooked up with the same people as before, so we were able to continue conversations and just learning about what's happening in different parts of the world, going for this global aspect is so important. And so I'll just say thank you for having them and for all your great words and presentations and sharing so freely, and look forward to connecting with you more as we go forward.
Totally. Thank you, Beth.
Aisha and I talked about the disconnect there is between most people and the food where it comes from. And since our food comes from all over the world, and that, closing that gap is something I think we could be talking about.
Closing the gap. Yeah. Super important. And a lot of movement with us. I also talk with my breakout room Brian made of like using community supportive agriculture and not only knowing where our food is coming from, but also people who are growing our food, who is behind it. Carolina, speak up.
Yeah, and we in our group we talked about really about the power of study and conversation. I think it was Kathleen mentioned, we all mentioned we weren't really necessarily sure where our food came from, but we could ask. We could begin that conversation. And we also talked about how do we bridge into the professionals. And again, maybe it's not having the solutions, but asking the right questions that can open the conversation we need.
So we started with a good question. Yes, Elizabeth, please.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk about this, but possibly I would have liked to have mentioned this. In the UK, there's an initiative around changing the narrative from us being consumers to food citizens. So it's amazing how you do become empowered when it's now you're a citizen with choices, who can make decisions, who can make changes in their food environments, in their food choices. Being a consumer, it just sort of shuts down choices. I can share possibly afterwards a report done by the Food Ethics Council in the UK. They did the project all around food citizenship. So in the UK, we're constantly talking about being like an empowered food citizen, in your activism. So thank you.
Yes, please share with us, because I think that's really nicely tied to the final part, because I know that we are soon running out of the time. And what I really also want to encourage you is like, how can we keep this conversation going, right? And so I will try to connect to my desktop. Right, you can see it. So just send. So I mean, as also you mentioned and Carolina mentioned, like we by no means we know the answers. We just want to seek for people who are also willing to work and see similar problems and are passionate and want to encourage each other. How can we support each other in our works? And in one of the studies that I was reading about human health, soil health connection, I think it's summarized beautifully. So I just wanted to read it to you very shortly. Need for communication of soil human health connection with the public. All of our knowledge goes unseen if people are not aware of it. As scientists, we spend a lot of time communicating with each other, but are not always so effective at communicating outside of the scientific sphere. To make informed decisions about the topic, people have to be aware of the topic. Once aware of the problem or an issue, people are more likely to engage with that issue. However, few people seem to recognize the links between soil and human health. This certainly is not because of lack of communication between scientists. A number of recent papers, books, and book chapters have addressed this issue in the literature of multiple scientific and human health fields. Closing all the gaps will require multidisciplinary teams that are able to communicate across those disciplines. As for example, soil scientists are not typically trained in human health issues, and human health experts are not typically trained in soil science, while neither of these groups are typically trained in effective large scale communication. So we need each other, and I think it's time for us also to try to spread not only our knowledge but also our voices outside of the bubbles that we exist. So there's a few ways that we prepared for you to be able to engage with us, and would encourage all of you, and we would love that if you would do that. So first we have a LinkedIn group that if you are just more interested in like passively sharing the information, you can check it out. We'll most likely be updating it, sharing new findings. Maybe also we can introduce each other to know, hey, I have this project in UK, and then we know somebody works in UK, and we can find each other. If any of you would like to get a bit more actively engaged, and this is especially focused on people from European Union, actively engaged with the coalition, we also have a Slack channel where we can have a bit more ongoing discussion. And I just in our Zoom, I will send one more time a Google form where you can also fill out to give us the feedback, and also tell us if you would be interested in getting actively engaged in any way. But even if not, please try to fill it out so we can also understand how can we improve, what kind of topic we should share for the next time. We'll also send this Google form in an email after this webinar. So also, if you know existing resources, and I already saw some people sharing interesting links, please share with us whatever you know about education of human health, soil health, or agricultural health, human health connection. This is a screenshot from our website. We are currently trying to pile out all of the research that we could find there. So also, if you're looking for any resources, we encourage you to check it out. And then we would like to continue having these discussions and having these webinars, and we want to have different type of webinars, some focus on for farmers with trying to spread the insight of what are the benefits for human health and also economical health, economical status for farmers to use regenerative agriculture. We want to have more nerdy in detail webinars about human health and human microbiome and soil microbiome. This was very first webinar for us, so we didn't want to go too in detail, but I know that we could, probably take each of the concepts separately and discuss together for hours and hours. And we hope in the future to also maybe do a bit less lecturing and more like just free flow sharing. And then also one of our main objectives is to create a course specifically focused on soil health and regenerative agriculture, which we can then spread around and redistribute across different health profession institutions, medical professions. So if any of you know, first and foremost, courses like this already, we'll be super interested to hear about it. But also if any of you know some kind of organizations that maybe have people with relevant skills as digital marketing and video editing, etc., that can help us to bring this course to life and then help us to bring the outreach that we aim for. And that's it for now. I mean, we still have 20 minutes, so I would love to stop sharing, and then maybe we can have a bit of free flow. And I will just, I will send you all of like an email with a follow-up and also with this presentation and with the Google form where we can like continue the conversation. So I will just stop sharing. And I open the floor. If you're also welcome to leave earlier, but maybe some of you would like to share what you're working upon, and maybe if there's already some bridges that we can see in sharing the insights from your work locally. Thank you, Mary. Yes, people who have raised their hands, please just speak up. I can see, okay, I will start from Carolina. Yes.
A big thank you actually for the team for putting this together. I think from what we heard in our group, there is interest in both obviously nutrition and global health and the regenerative agriculture, and it's finding the leverage point of the connection of the two. And I think this was a really beautiful start. So maybe that's more of my question is, the people that are here and your team as well, what would this coalition look like in your eyes? Like, would you like it to achieve? What are the principles, embodiment? Would you want to do workshops around that? Maybe just a little bit more of your vision for it.
Reza, do you want to take it or should I go for it?
Yeah, I can. I think now it's really like an open ground. We are starting to see who is the community and who wants to help and what. So we set up this first goal, which is to create this first online course for health professionals, and we're sticking to it. But if someone comes up and say, hey, I actually have this other idea and I want to do this in my community or online or whatever, then we can also manifest in that direction. But right now, it's really a co-created movement where we all create it together. There's no line of exactly of where we want to go. There's just these two topics that need to be connected somehow. So,
so staying in like the divergent phase per se, and then really collecting the scale of information and wisdom that is in the collective.
Yes, exactly.
And maybe just to add, I think, at least for me, like one of the personal like dreams is to also reach out to farmers and to start empowering farmers with the insights of what is the potential of them growing using regenerative principles, not only for the ecosystem and also like their economical stability, as Dimitri is working with, but also like how they can basically ensure that health of their community starts from the health of their soil and what kind of powers farmers have. Because in my ideal world, we don't need nutritionists. Farmers are our nutritionists. Daniel, would you like to maybe take it off?
Yes, thank you. Great to learn and about this coalition, and it's amazing to see how things develop. I'm president of the Swiss Association for Regenerative Agriculture, and we're an association that's an umbrella association, including farmers, processors, traders, consumers, and everybody interested in making the systems change happen. So I really appreciate your work. And I'm based in Basel, Switzerland. As you may know, Basel is quite a hub for the chemical pharmaceutical industry. And interestingly, the Basel University is now starting to see the relationship between human health and soil health. And I think there is a huge potential. I would say, of course, farmers, but I think companies to better understand how can they contribute to better food system with a positive impact on health. And companies like Nestle or Unilever are not known for healthy products, but they have now committed to support regenerative agriculture. And I think they need also to understand that it goes beyond. It has to do with health. And the issue is really how can we make basically our voice heard at this level. At the end, I think it's great to work with farmers, but we need to work with the let's say the companies that make business out of products produced on farms. And so I think it's a huge task, and we need to work together. And I look forward to seeing Amsterdam early September, and really to share experiences and to see how can we accelerate the transition first at the farmers level, because even if companies have committed to regenerative agriculture, it doesn't reach the farms usually. And second, how can we really integrate the health aspect in all this discussion, because it's all about carbon now. And we should really focus more on the systems view and on the health aspect. So great work, and looking forward to work with you.
Very interesting. I can already see new potential work emerging from this. Yeah, and see you in September in Amsterdam. Brian, please.
So can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, Dimitri.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you guys for convening this. This is it's great to see familiar faces and new faces. I think this is a very exciting space to be having a conversation. So I've just been going through a role of different things that I should say right now, but I think you know, we're talking about farmers, talking about consumers. I think it's important to understand that all of those individuals operate within a system, right? And the system, at least in the speaking for the United States, is governed by increasingly globalized corporations, right? And that they are writing the rules for their own profit. And so when we talk about engaging private sector, which I do think is important, it's also important to acknowledge the types of businesses. And so here in the United States, common measures of industry consolidation show that industry is consolidated across the food system. It's farm inputs, outputs, you know, off-takers, processors, distributors, grocery stores. And so the shift to local and regional systems, which are more resilient, as we've seen in the face of the COVID trade disruptions, that it's really shifting towards values that aren't always captured by globalized corporations. And so even in the regenerative movement, we're seeing it begin to be more and more captured by global corporations, where they are flying the regenerative flag, but not living the regenerative values. And so it's really challenging. How do you have that conversation in a way that conserves the values that we're trying to promote, and scale the solutions across the entire food systems, but yeah, without losing that differentiation and the reason that we're engaged in this conversation. Sorry, maybe that's too gloom and doom, but thank you for hosting this conversation. This has been fantastic, and I'm just really excited to see where this all goes.
Thank you, Brian. I think you are raising a lot of our concerns as well with greenwashing and being the ability of the big corporates being able to use now like the health claims also to spread their great impact within like now human health. And so it's of course it's a very delicate, and of course like this we are so locked up on this system as well, because those companies are also the ones that can make the biggest change because they have the resources for it, you know, like we are doing all of this voluntarily just because we care, but they within one decision they would change some people's life and products, etc. So it's a complex systems. Elizabeth, would you like to speak up?
Lower my hand first. Oh, right. Can you hear me?
Yes. Perfect.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I thought I'd done something odd. Yeah. No. Fabulous. I only sort of heard about this probably about 2 hours before this session went live. So you know, it's just I'd say some fate there that I actually checked my emails earlier. So absolutely marvelous to now become more aware of, you know, lots more people across the world who are passionate about this whole area, you know. So I'm just thrilled to have you know, come along this afternoon. Just wanted to flag up what I'm doing. So I'm actually co-founder and director of a little social enterprise called Growing Real Food for Nutrition. So it's about learning how to grow, measure and promote the benefits of nutrient-dense food for better citizen and planetary health. And we've actually recently got some funding. We're currently getting samples from farmers to get samples of particular crops and samples of the soil in which the crops were grown in, sending them to a laboratory in Scotland that we've recently got commissioned, that's using the same standard operating protocols as the Bionutrient Institute in America. So we're actually linked with the Bionutrient Food Association, and our data will then be pooled with their global open source database on crop nutrient variation. So the funding it's only going to give about 32 samples, but it will actually then enable 32 data points from the UK to be put on the global map to then see what's going on in the UK in terms of food quality. And then that data will help to calibrate the bionutrient meter that you spoke about. The Bionutrient Institute, it's actually planning at some point later in the year or early next year to be able to manufacture the bionutrient meters at $100 each. And I think when that happens, it's going to radically transform things, because that makes it affordable and accessible to more, whether it's like the farmers, distributors, or I'll say the citizens in the supermarket or at the farmers market, picking up that carrot and testing it. So yeah, there's lots of exciting things out there, and I think this coalition, if we can sort of share what's going on, and then also help to build the evidence, and then get that out there at all different levels, then change will definitely be positive, but will be positive and transformative and possible. So thank you.
Elizabeth, we'll get in touch with you later so we can also share about your work on the website and with everybody else as well. Okay, if you want it. Cool. Should we move to Kelly?
Yeah, thanks. So I wanted to share a couple of different resources. So one was that you mentioned the interest in a curriculum, and I know Johns Hopkins probably already has some of this stuff, but there's also the Hunger and Environmental Nutrition Dietetic Practice Group of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has they have a curriculum that is for dietetic students that we can learn more about. Here's the different resources I'm going to mention, so all the different links. So there's a curriculum link is the second one, and so just want to mention those resources are out there, as well as the organization 50 by 40, which works to reduce production consumption of animal agriculture 50% by 2040, and have the remaining animal agriculture be more sustainable and using regenerative practices. And there's a few different working groups as part of that. I'm part of the health working group. So there's some different groups on there: Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments. There's a Doctors for Nutrition group, Physicians Committee on Responsible Medicine, Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future, Healthcare Without Harm, and then my organization, the Interfaith Public Health Network. So there's a variety of different groups, and we're always kind of brainstorming, like, what is the role of, working within the health sector, working on addressing these issues that 50 by 40 is working on. So I just wanted to mention that group as well, as this this new coalition is just getting started and thinking about who else is doing similar work.
Amazing. We will get all of these resources you shared, and we'll also upload on the website. Thank you, Kelly. Beth.
Hi, I just want to say thank you again. And I put up my background. I just want to mention we are also a new organization. It's called Food as Medicine Global, and our website is foodasmedicine.global. Super excited about what you all are doing and how we can work together. We just published our resource directory, wanting to list all the organizations, nonprofits, and so on that are doing work in this arena. So if you want to be listed and you haven't yet already received an email for us, maybe we can connect about that as well. That applies to anybody doing this great work. And our basically our tagline, or what we're most interested in, is uniting agriculture and healthcare. So just right up the same line. It's just all these different stakeholders, and there's chefs, because there's healthy cooking, and there's students. So connecting with an organization that's all about educating K through 12 in the US. That's our kindergarten through 12th is our main education before what we call college. So there's a lot of stakeholders, a lot of stuff going on, and we just want to be part of amplifying the good work that others are doing and engaging people to increase awareness and change to a more positive, healthy food system.
Amazing. Thank you, Beth. So, well, if anybody else wants to say something, we have 3 minutes, but otherwise, thank you everybody so much for being here. This has been a pleasure. And we will send you an email with the follow-up of this conversation and the next steps, and how can you be part of the coalition with us. So that's it.